Watch this. Oh, hallelujah.
Get up right now.
I'm hearing something real powerful for someone.
And now listen to this.
Send that wind that reaching out to hurting people. Hallelujah. This is what you do. Something more than it was. Yes. Listen to this right here. I heard then, it was like the Lord spoke that through me then.
Oh, there it is. Get up right now.
There it is again. Hallelujah. Send that wind that reaching out to hurting people. Hallelujah. This is what you do. Something more than it was.
I like that, don't you?
Get up right now.
There it is again, so strong.
Welcome. Nope, that's not what I wanted to select. There we go. That's a little bit better. Welcome to another episode of Coffee Time with Poptart, where you're joined with me, where I'm displayed twice on the same screen. Because I'm a bit of a narcissist, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, good man. As is tradition, I have coffee with me, even though it's been sitting on my table now for 24 hours, and I probably shouldn't be drinking it, but shh, we won't tell anyone. It's fine. Allegedly, maybe, who knows. So those who were here for the stream last week. Well, hang on, I don't vibe with how my picture is looking at the moment. There we go. Yeah. So those who were here for. Sorry, I'm just moving assets around. Pay no attention to me. Don't look behind the curtain. Those who were here last week know that I was responding to a lot of criticism that Unity was getting, and rightfully so. And in a shell note, the stream last week was Unity isn't broken. It's a really good program. It's a really good program for not only making games, but also making programs and doing AI research as well, which Google uses Unity for their DeepMind institution, where they, well, I say institution very loosely, but they use it for the DeepMind project, where they develop and test artificial intelligence. Really great program. Problem is they received a lot of hate because now what Unity's wanting to do, and they are still doing it, which we'll touch base on later, is they are wanting to now go to game developers and say, once you reach so many thousands of dollars in revenue and so many thousand installations, we're going to be charging you money for every installation of a game after that. And while these aren't retroactive, the community has seen this for what it is, as a cash grab. and the response was very violent. Well, I say violent in loose terms, but it was very immediate. No one was really happy about it for very good reasons. And it was severe enough to a point where Relogic, which is the studio behind a number of popular games, decided to take $200,000, which is probably a jab at Unity, because they said you have to earn. At the time when they originally introduced this policy, they said once you reach 200,000 downloads and 200,000 in revenue from your games, we're going to charge you so much money beyond that for every installation of a game that is based on our engine. They said we're going to take $200,000. Relogic said, sorry, we're going to take $200,000 of our revenue, and we're going to give $100,000 to two different open source platforms that are developing their own game engines, which we believe are better to support than Unity's game engine. And I ended the stream by saying what's probably going to happen is they're not going to pull back the policy and get rid of it. They're going to proceed with a variation of it. And the annoying part is, once I released that stream and finished it and pushed it to YouTube, I actually hopped on Twitter, and apparently 6 hours, and keep in mind, I got up well up after this, they did this, 6 hours before I ended the stream, Unity had actually done a response to all the hate from the community, and I was like, shit, I'm gonna have to redo this, aren't I? So originally what I was going to do is I was going to look at the video, I was going to do some research on it, and then do another PowerPoint presentation, but I thought, let's be a little bit different, and as opposed to going through all of that, let's just do a play-by-play reaction to the recording of the stream, which is still available on YouTube, and go on with absolutely zero prep, and just give my thoughts on individual points of that stream, and for nothing else other than I've been very busy this week and haven't had a chance to actually watch it, so I thought it would be a bit fun to do some off-the-cuff stuff, so... Oh, whoops. Here we go.
Price changes, all of the stuff around that, and answering a lot of questions that are some from me and a lot from other people on YouTube, other influencers, game developers, and people on Twitter. First, I just want to clarify right from the bat that we were planning on talking before. We were supposed to do a chat about AI stuff, but that got delayed, obviously, because something much bigger came up. This is not like a sponsored thing or anything like that. I want to make sure this is clear. It's just an opportunity to ask Mark a bunch of questions and kind of get some inside feedback on what's actually been going on there, why all of the changes are happening, what the final results are going to be, and hopefully clarifying things up quite a bit. So without further ado, I want to bring out Mark and say thank you very much for coming out here and joining us and clarifying all this stuff, telling us what's going on, and giving us some insight into the future, and for taking what looked to be some extremely hard questions. Everybody in Slack, I'm in the Slack with a bunch of other insiders, and they asked some really hard, very strong questions, so we'll be getting into those in a minute. So anyway, thank you again, Mark. I wanted to just start with letting you talk and say your piece first, and go over what's going on and get all of that out before we dive into the questions, if that's okay.
So, for those who don't know, this gentleman here is Mark Whitten. You probably can't see the entire name out there, but he's currently the head of the company that develops Unity.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate being on, Jason, and thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm not going to go over all of the changes here. I'm sure we're going to talk about them a lot. I hope people had a chance to see my letter earlier today or to go through the back and the other stuff there. But I did just want to hit one part first that's really, really important, and that's just I want to say I'm sorry. I know it's been a very tough week to hear a bunch of very well-deserved feedback. We made it very clear know that comes with, how hard it is to earn trust, and I know how easy it is to lose trust. Super clear. We've got a lot of work to do. And so I really, really wanted to start with telling everybody here.
Okay, so this is one thing that's always irked me just a wee bit. Whoops. Just a wee bit about their response, because when people have been responding to this, it's been very clear that people don't understand that to create a policy where you are going to introduce a new way to charge people for using your product. It's not like you roll into work and decide, okay, for today, starting right now, we are going to introduce a policy. We're going to charge people X amount of money based on, in this case, once they reach $200,000 in revenue and 200,000 installations. That doesn't happen. Whenever you're dealing with money in any sense, the amount of planning and preparation that goes into that is huge. There are meetings on meetings. There are with people from your financial, your legal team, IT, because when you're dealing with ones and zeros, especially to do with money, you got to make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's, because 1 cent out of place, one missed dollar, and things can go arse over tea kettle very quickly, because it's one, people don't want to be charged more than they absolutely have to, and two, especially when it comes to tax, governments want to have a paper trail of where you got your money from. Did you get your money legally? Are you giving us our tax? And then investors as well want to make sure that, want to track, how their business is doing, where they getting their profits from. And then there's also the law side of it. And I bring that up because the response doesn't... This response, at least the start of it, doesn't signal to me that they did much research, if at all, as to what the community reaction would have been if they were to introduce this policy. It seems to be very... their response in general seems to be very reactive as opposed to proactive, and we will see throughout this screening if that changes. But currently, based on all the literature I have seen, it and read, and the responses I've seen from industry, they appear to be... how to phrase this? They appear to have been caught with their pants down with a policy that no one likes, that appears to be nothing more than a cash grab. But let's be fair, let's look at the whole presentation and hear what they have to say.
There's a lot of things that I think people aren't clear about, and a lot of things that people are just really confused about, like why some decisions were made, what those decisions are, and what's going to happen in the future too. So let's get started. I'm just going to start diving into my giant list of questions. So the first one was why did you go about doing this whole thing, the pricing plan change, putting this up, posting it out there, making a lot of people angry, of course, and then rolling it back a week later? Like, what was the point of doing all that if you're going to kind of do this rollback afterwards?
Okay, so just one thing I'd like to point out. This is not 100% correct. They didn't roll back the policy. What they did is... remember how I said earlier with the two... I shall see if I can bring up the actual tweet from them. Let's see, Twitter. Unity. Let's see. Here we go. Where is it? So, sorry if my mic's a little loud. I'm still futzing around with how far away my mic actually needs to be to pick up my voice, because I don't usually speak at volume. Let's see, where is it? here are some more details. Pricing updates. Okay, so here's what it is. So what they did is the original fee structure was way lower than this. So what they've done is they've actually more than doubled the threshold. So I'll just zoom in so you can actually see it. So once your game has reached $1 million USD in gross revenue trailing over 12 months and 1 million initial engagements or downloads, as it's more colloquially defined by the layman, they'll start charging you either a rate based on monthly initial engagements or 2.5% of your game's monthly gross revenue. While it is a step away from what they initially introduced, it is still the same policy, just with a higher cap. So to say it's rolled back, I feel, is disingenuous. It is still there. It's just they've raised the bar of what they will. They've raised the bar that you have to meet in order for them to start charging you.
Well, the most fundamental thing that we're trying to do is we're building a sustainable business for you. And for us, that means that we do need to have a model that includes some sort of balance exchange, including shared success. That's really, really important for the long-term future of how we think about our business, how we think about the engine. And the main reason is really clear. It has to be a sustainable business. We want to keep massively and deeply investing in the engine. We want to make sure that we can build the best editor and runtime for everyone to build the games today and tomorrow. And that's the reason why we're working on it. I'm very, very focused on that. It's very important to Unity.
Oh, that's fair. And how much, real quickly, can we talk about just what, for the people who haven't seen the info, talk about what the just high-level changes are for people who don't know. So it's not completely removed, but there are changes that it's only going to apply to specific versions, and there were some other things. Can you just give a real quick overview of that for anybody who's just catching up right now and maybe hasn't seen the post?
Yeah, there's a long fact with a whole bunch more details, but I think I would just really babysit four areas. First one, I'll just start by talking about Unity Personal. That's the version of Unity that's free to use. It's used by the majority of all of our game creators. It's not a part of the runtime program at all. And we made some other changes along with that. The first one is we made sure that people have the option to remove the Unity splashing if they would like when they're using that particular product. And we're also changing it so that before, the way that Unity Personal works is you get up to $100,000 of revenue for your company. Now it's $200,000, so twice the size. So it's easier to use for more people, covers more cases, and it's more flexible. So that's number one. Not a part of the program, totally free. Majority of our users want more flexibility. And again, because we've announced some other changes around sunsetting Unity Plus, that means that you can use Unity Personal and not have to do the slashing, which is a reason that some people were using Plus.
Okay, so this, I think, is a really smart move. Well, not a smart move, but I suppose it is a olive branch from Unity, because what people don't realize is the reason Unity is so popular is a lot of lower-end studios use Unity because they can't afford to use bigger name products, or they can't afford to make their own game engine, so they rely on this program to not only create games but release them. So to exclude them does mean a cut in revenue, but I feel as though it is, at least at face value, until they change it, it is a sign that they are at least trying to mend bridges between both themselves and the community that they support.
So then if you move on to the runtime program. So the runtime fee applies for people who are over both $1 million in sort of trailing 12 months revenue, money they've made over the last ongoing basis, and 1 million engagements with new users, essentially. And for those users, there's following changes. The first one is, this is with next year's LTS, what is 2023 LTS shipping in 2024. So it doesn't impact any games that have currently shipped, and it doesn't impact the games people may have already been working on for a very, very long period of time. One of the most, I think, really key pieces of feedback we've heard is that it was a really big business model change that people didn't expect. And so it's very clear to us that having it start on a future version where everybody can make the choice to use it is really, really important. The second that we've heard along with that is that people need to know that they can rely on a set of terms when they start using the version of Unity, so we're going to make sure that that's the case. There are even some pieces about that, things like the GitHub repo that, by the way, I will just say, prior to last week, I did not know existed, and now I know a lot about, and we're making sure, I think it's already back up there, and that's always been there. Obviously, our website will always have our legal terms and terms of service and all of those sorts of things, but we're going to make sure it's also on the GitHub so people can track that. And then the last that I would talk about is when you are using this future version of Unity, you have a game that's over the $1 million, million engagements, that there's a choice between either a 2.5% revenue share or measuring based on this calculated amount of initial user engagement that you can do. And if you do both of those, you'll always be billed the lesser of whatever that calculation is. But it's also up to you. If you only wanted to do one of them, you can leave the box blank, whatever. And again, that's only for those games that were over those thresholds.
Okay, so that's one thing that I will give them kudos for. I believe I touched on it previously, but again, and I'm trying to be as neutral as I can with my response because I don't like what they've done. However, as someone who has tried and failed to run their own business and done some studies in the areas of business management, a business does exist to make profit. They are not a charity. They are not there to give handouts. They exist to make profit not only for themselves but for their shareholders and for maintaining their business and for future investments. And it is not unreasonable for them to consider other ways of more efficiently gaining money from the product that they are providing us. What I feel is a bit unique, however, is with this, I don't like that they are charging money for something that they really shouldn't be charging money for, but they are giving you not only two options, but the lesser of two options, but the lesser amount of a calculation, so you can save money on your on this new policy that they're going to introduce. While it is an additional fee, they are again extending another olive branch to the community to help mend bridges. Like I said before, I am curious to see if they will continue this policy going forward, or if in future releases they will get rid of it. But it would be, I don't know, something about their response so far and the way that the word of this policy makes me feel like down the track they would more than likely get rid of it or replace it with a more aggressive policy altogether, or an aggressive version of this policy.
So you give them
Sorry, one more minute. And then the other key part of that one is both numbers being self-reported, both on the revenue side and on the user engagement.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I think there are a couple questions about that we'll get into, but I think the self-reporting and the mix-up around there is a big one that I think people will be pretty happy with. Let's go. There's a lot of questions, so I want to go on to the next one, which reads kind of meanly, so I'm going to read it really mean too. Did you even bother to talk to customers before you rolled out your version from last week? No, did you guys talk to customers? Did you talk a little bit about that?
We did. We talked to partners, large customers, small customers, lots of internal people. we didn't listen to enough of their feedback. Just want to be clear. We should have listened to more of their feedback, and we need to do better. And I could tell you, as an example, on Sunday, I think, it's been a long week, so the days merge together a little bit, but on Sunday, I think we put up on X a kind of a statement saying that we'll get back to you in a couple of days. The reason we didn't get back to you in a couple of days is because as we were working through the plan, we were going back and talking to big customers, independent developers, partners, over and over again to get that feedback. Because I think the most fundamental thing about talking to customers is it's kind of an ongoing, iterative conversation, and we didn't do that well enough. And now I'm very, very convicted on this policy that we're doing that.
Nice. Yeah, I think that, in my opinion at least, the updates seem to kind of fix everybody's problems that I've talked to. Especially, we'll dive into the trust stuff later, but I think that's the one part people are still a little iffy on. But I think that's even probably going to get mostly cleared up. So let's go on to the next question, which was, why didn't you just go with a rev share model from the get-go? So why not just go, hey, we're 2.5% now, or half of Epic, or whatever. Why was there a whole install thing in the beginning anyway?
We think it's going to be cheaper for a lot of games. So, listen, we're trying to build a model that we think is fair and is a good sort of value exchange that works for games once they find a level of success. And we also want to tie it to sort of this value that Unity brings, which is, our runtime that's inside of the games themselves. And so it felt like a way where we could tie those two together. And we think that in a pretty reasonable number of cases that's actually a smaller number, and we think that's good. Now, what we heard, got a lot of really, really good feedback, is that there were cases where people first off planned, because they're like, well, I don't know, maybe something's going to go crazy, or I have this particular scenario and that doesn't work. And so adding in the 2.5% revenue share as an option, you can only use that, or where you have the both, and so you can always plan for it and hopefully do better. Definitely was, frankly, my opinion, makes the plan better based on what we were trying to do. So really good feedback.
Yeah, to be honest, I said this in the streams earlier, that the idea of being forced on a rev share doesn't sound appealing to me, but come from the background of MMOs and $50, $60 AAA games where a small install fee, we're looking at less than 1% or a 1% fee. So I like the option of both, but yeah, I haven't understood the argument of just force a rev share. So hopefully that doesn't change and we stay with both options. I assume that's the plan.
That's absolutely the plan. The plan is that choice.
All right. So the next question is a pointy one. Responsible for the policy and its decision to roll out.
Well, listen, this is my part of the business, and there's a lot of people, obviously, internally that have worked on this. The executive team has worked on this, but I'm responsible for what we're doing inside of Create. The entire executive team has been a part of this. But I'll also say, this is really important for Unity. We have to focus on building a strong, sustainable business that allows us to continue to, invest in the ways that we want, so we can build the best game engine that hopefully everybody wants to use to make great games.
I tend to agree there. Although there was an idea on the last stream that you should just make your own Fortnite and make billions off of that to fund it, which would be nice. if you don't mind that idea. All right.
By the way, if it was easier, it's like make your own Fortnite. I think that's probably number one there.
Make your own Fortnite. That's never gonna happen.
No, I agree. I think it would be nice, but it's definitely a good dream. This next question is one I have been wondering and I don't know anything about. And they were wondering if it's legal to change the terms of service overnight. And I don't know if it was necessarily overnight, but I don't know anything about the legal side of this stuff. All I've heard is random speculation from people who are also not lawyers. But can you just address this question, the legality of the terms of service change? And maybe the GitHub thing too, you'd mentioned you just kind of discovering that. I don't know.
Okay, so that's interesting, because I didn't think they would. So I believe what they're referring to is, on their forums there was a person who was one of the top comments, actually referred to a specific section of the terms of service, which says they can update this policy without warning, without notice to anyone. And I think they actually got quite a few responses. I'm just wondering where I could bring that up. Is it on? I was wondering if I could find that. Let's see. I can't recall. I do believe it was on one of their websites. I can't remember which. If I can find it, I'll post it later on.
Know anything about it, really?
Well, I think at sort of one level, all companies change their terms over time, frequently and constantly and consistently, because frankly, the world changes. Gaming is a very dynamic world. The world we live in is dynamic, and there's obviously always new things that are being added or whatever. However, I want to back up from that and say, it kind of goes back to your trust point, which is, I think, one thing that I heard a lot is people very, very deeply need to know what they're signing up for when they take a version of Unity to build their game on, and that they can, be sure that they can continue to use that. And I think that feedback, there's a lot of other things that come along with trust. So I just want to be clear that feedback is really, really, really super clear, and that's one reason why, what I talked about today, we're going to make sure that you can do that. And it also does come back to the GitHub thing. Again, I didn't know about that. It sort of was, I didn't know about the repo. So, and from the Unity perspective, we've always put our terms on the web page and make sure they're there, including the new ones, and show the difference, what's changed between those two. However, we're a community. We're heavily used by community of game developers. So another way that we can make sure that that's clear is to put it in the types of tools that they use, like repos and GitHub, so it's easy to track. So to me, that was an obvious one that we should also put back.
Kind of dodged the question there a little bit.
The legal stuff, I try to avoid it because I barely understand it when it comes to the simple stuff. So, yeah, one day I want to have a chat with a YouTube lawyer on game stuff. I think it would be a fun one. So, there's another question about getting updates on stuff. They're wondering when you're going to share more details regarding all of the questions and concerns that people have had. You released a fact, but there wasn't a lot of detail in there. They're wondering, is there like a plan to roll out, like the exact full, like whatever the legal document version of the details, whatever that looks like, something that's a lot more detailed in the near future?
For sure, and that's one of the key things. This was an announcement, a week ago. It's an announcement today of something that's coming in the future, and we're going to be providing a lot more details around it. But I'd actually say something even more specific. We don't have all the answers right now. That's one thing we've heard very clearly over the last week, and so we're not putting out like here's this perfect thing right now, because we're actually engaging with our customers at every level, our customers and our developers, and listening. And we're going to work on that. We're going to work on it transparently, and yeah, there'll be a lot more details that are coming out over the next weeks and months for this program. But I will also say those will be part of a conversation that we're having, so people understand how we're thinking, and we're getting feedback from from our game development community.
Okay. I expected it was going to take a while. I mean, yeah, I thought we would get some more stuff a little bit earlier, but I'm not surprised. It's a big company and big change, so I can't say I'm too surprised that it's taking a while to kind of nail that all down. And if you want to get it perfect, you talk to people. You can't just. I think that was the big lesson here. So I want to go on. Like I said, there's a lot of questions, and I want to make sure that everybody's get asked. So, how will you track what version of Unity developers are using, or is that something you're even going to track?
You know what version of Unity that you're using, and we're going to make sure that you're clear, like what terms are associated with that particular version. This is actually, frankly, the same as actually Unity Personal. When we say that you can use Unity Personal up to $200,000, we're also not tracking that. We're just telling you that this is what the rights are associated with this version, so that and I think, and then obviously if we find out that you're doing it, we have a conversation, but
Yeah, so there's not like an extra tracking or anything added in, which I kind of assumed. I figured it would be just like the current setup where you use Unity free and then eventually you upgrade to Pro unless you don't like to follow the rules. And maybe if you get super huge or something, somebody at Unity might hit you up, but I don't expect anything outside of that. So,
That I think is a kind of an interesting one, because a lot of the feedback I was or not feedback, comments I was seeing out there were they were a little bit annoyed that Unity was tracking their shit, and I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out, because will people self-report? And I have like a morbid curiosity to see what would happen if Unity did end up snapping someone for fucking going over those limits, like the million downloads and $1 million in revenue, and not reporting it to Unity. I think that would be. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
So, speaking of huge, this is a question that I think has come up a lot, and I really don't know the answer to. I don't understand the solution for it, which was, who pays the runtime fee or rev share when your game is on like Microsoft's Game Pass? How does that actually work? I mean, did Microsoft already say, yeah, we're good with it, or is that? Can you talk a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah, well, this program is associated with our licenses for our developers and the publishers as well. So that's where it is. But by the way, that was actually one of the most key pieces of feedback that we got over the last week. Was there's so many different kind of distribution channels where people are putting their games, and the rules are different on all of those. And in some of those, it might be hard to track something like engagements, and so that's why there are things like choice for revenue share or engagements. And it's also why there are not 100% perfect details on exactly how you count all of those, because we're engaging with our community to make sure we come up with really good examples for information that you have that track the intent of what we're talking about, that's easy for you to self-report. And, you know, we put some of that into the fact today. You can see some of the examples. And, you know, we're listening there, and we'll be building more sort of and sort of documentation for everyone.
Can you, real quickly, can you just explain the engagement thing one more time for everybody who's unsure on what that is? I feel like it ties in, like, is an engagement they got it on Xbox Game Pass, or they downloaded it on Steam, or how does that work? Because I know there was a lot of stuff going on, piracy and all that. Yeah, I figure you got the details.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, like, sounded like a little corporate-y here for a second while I use the words around it, but I just use them to try to explain them a little bit. And that's, you know, the goal is as simple as saying that it's a legitimate user of your software on a distribution channel. So, okay, what's a legitimate user? Well, a legitimate user would be an actual user, not your automated use, not, you know, whether there was piracy, not someone that had bought it and instantly refunded it, but like a legitimate first time that someone was engaging with your free-to-play game or your paid game. What's a distribution channel? Well, an app store is a distribution channel. So if that user went to like a particular store and bought it or downloaded it or whatever, then you would start thinking.
Yeah, so it turns out I was right about the whole engagement thing.
You don't count those multiple times, right? Because I might have done the same thing in my library, and use on a couple of different devices. That's one, not two. So there's a bunch more examples that are around that in the fact, and we're very committed to making sure that we give more details around that. But our intent is very simple, which is that, you know, the first time that your game with our runtime engages with a very legitimate user on a distribution channel, like, use that as a count. And then again, we think that many times that will be much less than this 2.5% revenue share, and so you could pay less or less through that, or you just go to the revenue share if you didn't want to track that.
Right, that makes sense. I think it's most of the time, or at least, like I said, on the games that I've worked on, it would be less than 2.5%. But I like that there's that option there. And just to real quick clarify one more time for everybody, on the counting of those, that's just you're going, make sure I understand. You're going into like Steam and saying, hey, I sold this many, subtracting my refunds from that and putting that in.
Refunds, exactly, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I expected.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Well,
goal is self-reporting based on data that you easily have available, not sort of like I have to track some sort of user behavior that's, different than I've ever done or anything like that.
you don't have to go add in analytics or some tracking or anything. You just
Correct.
look at whatever your numbers are and then put those into base. Yeah, that's kind of been what I expected from the start, but it was definitely, I'll be honest, it was very unclear because it said there was a proprietary algorithm in there. I feel like those two words made the thing drastically more confusing and led to a lot of speculation. Even for me, I don't know what that means. Like, what?
Yeah, correct. We want to be super clear that self-reporting, and by the way, on both the revenue side and on that, is really key. It's why this program is very important. But we're trying to make sure that this is, easy for our game creators as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I mean, that seems like data that at least I've always had. If you sell games and have people download them, you've got the info on how many are downloading it or how much money you're making each month. So that seems relatively straightforward and a lot better than some built-in tracking spyware thing that I kept hearing about.
Yeah, and again, I'm sorry that I had to use the corporate jargon, but the truth is there's like say, why isn't it sales? But like sales doesn't work if it's a free-to-play game, and so we're just, we're trying to make sure that we can clearly define that in a way that works for a bunch of different ways that Unity chooses.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just now going away from the word installs, I think was the install as a reinstall, and that yeah goes overboard. So this next question is a big one. I'm curious. I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this, but how many customers have you lost, and how many more are you expecting?
Ooh, that's a tasty question. I like that. I like that question.
Start looking
All
into
right.
different options. People talking about changing their future games. Is this have you guys tracked that or been keeping an eye on that?
Listen, we've seen all of the critical feedback, and it really hurts to read those types of things. And based on what we said and not getting the feedback, I think the reaction that people had as well. My job, our job at Unity, is to make sure that we build the best product, the best platform that we can.
Okay, more dodging the question.
We're going to focus on that and hope to give people a great option so that they use it. But people definitely have options, and if we don't do a good job, and if they don't want to, we don't continue to invest in the way that we want to, then yeah, we know that they'll go somewhere else, and that's our focus.
Okay. Well, I think that with the changes, a lot of the people that were considering changing will probably reconsider that, especially and get into the terms of service type stuff. We'll get into those questions in a few minutes, I think. Let's go on though. It's tons, and I'm running out of time. We have a hard stop at 2, so I got to go quick. So now you'll be charging a revenue share and a seat license cost. How is that benefiting your users? Can you talk about why they both still exist?
Yeah, well, listen, our goal is to build a sustainable business so that we can continue to invest.
Again, more waffling.
The thing I would say is the majority of our users pay neither. Majority of our users are using Unity Personal, which is free to use, and we want to continue to deeply invest in making that a great platform for building games. Then, there are a variety of options where we're going to continue to add value to, whether it's Unity Pro or Unity Enterprise or those sorts of things for you to use it. And then for a subset of games that passes those really high thresholds, there'd be the runtime program as well. We feel like it's a balanced program that allows us to invest in the way that we want and be able to deeply deliver the features that will make it great for you.
Okay, just to put it out there, not as it's kind of relevant to what he was saying, but one thing I would like to see is he's raised a point that the majority of that he's not actually making as much of a profit on the majority of his users that use the personal version or the free or less expensive version of the software when compared to users who use the business or higher end or higher cost versions of the software. It would be interesting to see like a graph of what that split looks like because I'm kind of a visual person. Like I like to see graphs. I like to see pie charts and stuff like that when people are saying, "Oh," because when someone says, oh, the majority of our users actually use the personal version, not the enterprise version. Those are just words. While they may mean something to someone, mean something to Mark, they mean something to Mark because he's seen the raw facts, figures, the data behind that response. As someone who doesn't have access to that, it would be nice to see a visual of exactly what that split looks like with some numbers on it, or even with zero numbers. No. It would be nice to see a pie graph of what that split actually looks like, rather than just saying, oh, the majority of our users don't use enterprise, just so I can have my own personal satisfaction, like a visual of this is like the split between people who don't pay as much and people who we're making a lot of profit off of.
People building these amazing games that get built on Unity both today and tomorrow.
Real quick, I want to go back to that last question. There's a couple people complaining that you didn't tell them how many people you've already lost. I'm curious, is that like a number you actually know? Like, do you know that there's been a dip in users, or is that something that you have to wait a little while to see?
Listen, I see all of it on like any channel where we get feedback. Obviously, we see all of the feedback. I haven't seen anything on our like actual numbers that would show that. Not saying that means it's not happening. And I will just say that it's my job to make sure that we build the best product, so that.
Okay, so he's answering the question, but he's also.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of what
Sorry.
I figured.
So he's answering the question, but he's
But yeah.
dodging it because he doesn't have the figures. Okay.
So let's see.
All right, that's fair.
Here was one of the questions that this was one of my own questions, finally. If you could go back in time and redo this from the start, I'm wondering how you would have done this differently. Like, you went back to January or whenever the idea for this started coming up. What would you have done different?
Yeah, listen, we're going to do a business model transition that is new and it's different, and there's a lot of work to it. So obviously, I would have probably engaged in the conversation earlier, listened more, been more consistent and clear with some of the information we put out there. A good example is, we had an estimator.
Okay, so this is one thing that's kind of pissing me off a little bit, because when corporate entities respond to hate, or they're responding to a situation where they're trying to give clarity to something, or they're trying to save face, what they'll typically do is they'll make a positive statement, and then they'll reuse that positive statement as much as they can to either make clear that they are trying to do the right thing, or to distract away from a point. What he has danced around a lot up until this point is how he engaged the community. Yes, he has said, oh, we went back, like when we were talking about this, we engaged with key leaders and stuff like that, and oh, we just didn't listen. How to phrase this neutrally? This isn't a small policy change, and Unity knows this. Or the team behind Unity knows this, and they're not dumb, or at least I hope they're not dumb. So it's not that hard to sit down and go, hey, we want to. It's not like to go to like a game dev studio that makes a lot of money. It's not that hard to sit down with them and say, hey, we want to start charging for this in this way. From your perspective, what do you think is going to be a positive way to enforce that policy, so we can charge people in this manner, but do it in a way that's fair and reasonable? And I'll be curious to see specifically how those conversations went, even if it's just like minutes from the meetings they've had, or maybe just like short little audio snippets, if they exist, of those conversations where they went to developers and have it where I can not only listen to the conversation, but hear the questions that are asked and how they're asked and what sort of responses were given. And the reason I'd like access to that information is I want to compare the information that they were given from the questions that they asked against the specifics of the original policy, because I'm curious to see what sort of feedback they got from developers and what they chose to include in the original policy and what they chose to not include, because it sounds like, and I hope to God I'm wrong, but it does sound like they went to industry, and as opposed to listening to them, it sounds like they used that to wedge in a policy that would have been more focused on them making as much money as possible, as quickly as possible. Now, given his response, however, to be completely fair, and I hope to God I'm wrong, it doesn't seem like they were doing it as a all-out cash grab. What it does feel like is it feels like a very rushed policy, because it's like they used a gun where a scalpel would have been more appropriate, if that makes any sense here. It's like they introduced a very blunt policy, whereas if they spent time to actually comb through these questions that they supposedly asked, they could have actually come up with the version of the policy that they have now. If that makes any sense to you at all.
That we put out today with it, so, which we didn't before, which meant everybody was going to their own sheets and all that kind of stuff. So we created an information vacuum that made it even harder on its own. So we would do a better job there. But the actual fundamental thing is we didn't listen to enough feedback. And the plan today is a great plan for Unity, and I think it's a really strong plan for creators, and that's because we got better feedback and it made us build a better plan. So, candidly, what I would do if I went back is I would get that feedback.
Like, that's what pisses me off. This is something that pisses me off. What he's basically said is, we'd just do what we originally did, but we'd take the responses to the question we'd asked our big game developers and little game developers and everyone who uses our problem. We'd take all those responses more seriously to create a more better policy. So basically he's just saying, I'd go back and do my job.
Yeah, I like that. And the reason that I wanted to ask that question too is because I think a lot of people are concerned about what happens with future pricing changes. If stuff needs to change in the future, how is that going to be addressed? If this doesn't work out or something else totally drastically changes in the economy or the gaming scene, what's going to happen? So I was kind of curious. Like, it seems getting out there and having this be a conversation with questions from the beginning would have been a whole lot easier, a lot less painful. All right, let's go on to the next one. Is Unity in a bad place financially?
Listen, we're very focused on building a really strong company. You can go back and
Okay, again, repeating the point.
Second quarter, and we're optimistic about the path that we're on. But we're also really focused on making sure that we have the sustainable ability to make sure that we can continue to invest.
More repeating the point.
I mean, it's like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. I don't really mean to be like doing like that sort of repeated thing, but it's the truth. This is about making sure that this massive investment that we put into our engine and tools is one that we can keep doing. Because for us, that's the focus, making sure that we can build the very best platform that we can.
I'm curious, a little follow-up on that. According to your internal projections, is this going to be enough to just keep things stable, or do you feel like you're going to need to reevaluate in another year or two?
Listen,
I like that.
When we make a shift that says that it doesn't start until next year, obviously that means that games that are participating in the runtime fee are going to come later. So there's a shift on sort of where some of that comes, but this is about a business model transition. This this isn't about, hey, we need to do something for the next 3 months or something like that. This is about setting up the foundation of the company. This program is critical for us for the foundation of the company to be able to continue to invest for a very, very long period of time. So if the shape kind of is like this, you know, like a little shape that goes like this versus being earlier, that's less relevant than making sure that we have a right program that works for our creators. That's why I believe that this is a better program, because I think we got great feedback to make it a better program and works for Unity.
Yeah, well, hopefully it works for everybody going into it. I think it seems viable, and it seems a lot better than the previous one. So I'm good with it. So let's go over it. I want to get into these trust questions soon. So let's get into the next one. Has the stagnation over the engine over the last several years been in part due to low revenue? And will this price change fix that? Has that been like an internal thing where you just don't have the money to invest in whatever the new thing is that you're working on or get it done, or is that not an issue? I have no idea what the answer is here.
Well, I'm not going to accept the word stagnation because we are extremely focused and have been for years in a huge amount of things that we're putting into use. And by the way, I know that we get a lot of feedback where the editor doesn't work in ways that people want, where there are things that we can do better. So I'm not trying to say that. But we are focused in every one of our releases on putting out a bunch of new stuff, like the 22 LTS. I believe was a really great LTS. We made a ton of progress on things like DOTS 1.0, multiplayer, and other features. There's way more for us to do. But we invest across an extraordinary number of platforms so that Unity remains performant, that it's easy to build games across those platforms, and we're focused on continually adding features and functionality to make games better. There's more for us to do.
Okay.
I want to invest deeply in it, but I don't believe we've stagnated.
And then it's just repeating the same line again, just differently.
Are always what pushes us to do better.
Okay, I on the multiplayer side at least, I've seen some really good improvements. So I tend to.
There's more to do. There's more to do, but you know, Unity is so used across such a large variety of use cases that there are lots of in any one of 2D, 3D multiplayer. I'm proud of work that we've done, and I would say that there's a lot more for us still to do.
Yeah, no, Unity's still my favorite engine. It still does the most stuff that I need to do, so I'm happy with it. And I haven't had a whole lot of complaints personally. I know a lot of people have specific complaints about different systems, and some very valid ones. But overall, it's been, I think, pretty good. Can you talk about this? Is okay. Here, this is a big one. Can you talk about the stock distribution and selling complaints? Because I expect you probably can't talk too much about it because I don't know anything about stock laws and all that stuff. But I've seen all kinds of conspiracy theories posted about how people want Microsoft to buy the company and they're selling all their stock and all kinds of different things. And I have no idea how much of it is based in any kind of fact or rumor or just totally made up or what. So, and some of it's about I know there were some complaints about JR selling some stock, which I assume he does regularly though, and I don't really know. So can you talk about this and just explain that situation there, or is it something you talk about?
No, I'm happy to answer it. I mean, the simple truth is that all of the key senior executives have extraordinary rules, legal rules on when that they can trade stock because they have material non-public information or whatever the term is. And so for almost all of us, they're on this plan, something plan, that you sort of have to commit the stock here, and then it sells on a certain number of times. You have no control over it. The only way that you can commit the stock is to make sure that it trades in a way that you have control. So that stuff happens, and every time it happens, anything else that's happening, someone says, "Aha, they did this thing." Typically, it's either that automated plan, or that it was being some shares were granted, and that was the taxes that were being sold or whatever. So that's the general. I don't know about a specific. So that particular one comes up every time any one of those gets reported, because they all have to be reported publicly. But they're all on automated plans.
That's kind of what I assumed, that you don't get to make those decisions, and that you probably wouldn't want to because it's just too risky anyway. And the amounts of stock that I mean, there may be some other ones that are different, but the thing that a relatively low amount of stock and money for JR that we're talking about. So I wasn't sure why that was a big deal, but maybe there's more to it. And I don't know. But yeah, I assume, like I said, it was all kind of automated too. especially after talking to a couple of people who explained it. So, David Helgeson posted on, I lost my words. So David posted on Facebook that he thought you fucked up. Did you not consult your board before you decided to roll out this policy? I like the way that's posted.
Yeah, he's on my Facebook. He's one of my Facebook friends, so I definitely saw the post. But I would think there's the most important part there is it's not actually correct. It's a PCM job. And David, number one, is on the board. Number two, believes Unity. Number three is super connected to the game developer community in and out. And he has, I think his pulse on what people are saying, and people are talking to him all the time. And he's saying we should listen to more feedback. And he's right.
But he's on the board, so I assume the whole board has
That's
been
my point.
on this
He
thing.
said we, not they. I think he would put himself. He was on the board. Board was in all of those sorts of things. But he doesn't like disappointing our creators any more than any of us.
Yeah, nobody does. It's totally understandable. Okay. Yeah, I would assume the whole board has some insight and visibility and say on this kind of stuff. All right, now it's time for the big question, one that everybody keeps asking about in chat, and I think everybody is really, really curious to know. You want to know? Yeah, that's a good time for water. All right.
Double water drink. I'm now really worried.
Double it up. Yeah, this is a big one. So, how is Unity planning to regain the trust of its users after
What the fuck?
service on them overnight?
Oh, hell.
The biggest concern I think everybody has.
That's a great question, and there's only one way to answer that, and that's just the actions with work. So the first thing I'll tell you is I'm committed to making sure that we continue to our that said, not working. Now, here's a couple of actions that we're taking today. Number one, what I said about the terms of service to make sure that it's in there, so we can see actions around that and see it inside of the actual terms. Number two is that's why we are doing things like putting the GitHub repo back up, because we want to make sure that there's also visibility. That's another way that we can make sure that there's visibility into our actions and that people see it. But I totally get, trust is easy to lose and it's hard to earn, and we have to show it, and then people will judge us based on that. And so our job is to make sure that we build the right tools, go about it the right way, and that people see that, and then it's up to them to make their own determination about trust. I can't tell you that you should trust me. You have to decide that on your own.
That's fair. I think in the service thing, one of the questions that came up earlier that I think is related to this is if you're locking them with a specific version, so like 2019 is in the 2019 terms of service or whatever, is there anything that stops you from just changing that in the future? Or is there like a legal thing in that terms of service that we're not going to change this and we won't be changing this in the future? Or is there that people are worried that you can say that now and then 3 years from now just change it again? I mean, 3 years from now, 2019 and 2020 would be pretty old, but so yeah.
Well, we're not going to. I wrote that letter, and I wouldn't put it in the letter if I didn't think that the company was going to stand up for it, and so we're not going to. But that's why we're putting it in the terms. It's words in the terms, not just words in my letter. Someone told me that bold text is not legal. I said, okay, yes, we're putting it in terms. We're putting something bold in an email, and it's why we're going to make sure, like, get the repo. And we'll make sure that we keep putting it on the website.
Again,
we'll make
kind of repeating points, but
that's how we're showing it. I don't know other than that, but that's what we're going to try to do as a company.
It's just going to take some time, probably. So in the meanwhile, the next question was, why should users keep choosing Unity in the future? Seems like a very soft question. I'm sure they meant it as a very mean question and a hard question, but
I think people have a lot of choice. There's a lot of really good games.
again, repeating the point.
Make sure that ours is a great way that we can make great games across a lot of time. The thing that makes Unity the best, and I know this is where a lot of the sort of anger that we enthusiastically received this week is from our community. Part of why part of why I would say that you should use Unity is because we have an extraordinary community, builds extraordinary resources. It makes it easy for people to work with each other and learn things from each other. And we're going to try to continue to make sure that we build tools that make that continue to be there, and be there with you. And then again, you definitely have choices, and it's our job to make sure that you feel like ours is the best choice.
I feel like every game developer should experiment with all engines and try them all out, and then see kind of what works best for them. And in my case, it's been Unity for everything, or for most of the things recently. And yeah, I feel like you've got to try them all out and then see. Get in there and you get the experience with them and see what works well for you. And Unity's got, I think, a lot of good stuff. I don't want to promote or anything, but yeah, it's got a lot of cool stuff, and there's a lot of reasons that I'm not switching personally. But there was. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm not switching either. I really love it.
Cheeky bastard.
Yeah, there was something. There was something in the chat that I wanted to just quickly bring up. So you mentioned Plus going away, and one of the questions that nobody had an answer to was what happens with the splash screen if you're in 2020 and you no longer have Plus. Are you now forced to put the splash screen on or upgrade to 2023, or do you have to go or upgrade to Pro, I guess? Or is there a way to keep the splash screen off without Plus on the old versions, or is that something that's not worked out yet?
Well, first off, for those that are on Plus, by the way, there's not a ton of our users that are on Plus, but for those that do, there's a reasonable, it doesn't completely go away for like another year. So we want to make sure that we give people time as sunset, and there's details on it. If I get the dates, I might get the dates a little wrong on that, but you can go look. You can see what the plan is around sunsetting it. That also includes, by the way, there's going to be an offer for people if they wanted to get a special offer to go to Pro, or go down to Personal Edition. So we'll make that the case. But we'll make sure that going forward, that if you're on Personal Edition, that you can, like on 2023 and beyond, you can not use the splash screen.
Okay. I feel like the splash screen should still be like a fancy, like a Pro-only thing in the new versions, and like a fancy, cool one that
Yes.
people get excited about.
By the way, I gotta say, yes, it's crazy. I want to make sure that everybody's like, hey, I want to use Unity Splash. So I know that a lot of people like that feature as a feature that you decide to optionally use, but I would like to, at least over time, turn that around and say, I'm putting the Unity Splash screen in. We got a ways to go for that, so we'll go past it.
Yeah, I think in the future. So this question, I'm sure, came from someone in the insider group, and they asked how you plan to better utilize feedback from trusted users, given you've obviously failed to do so over the years.
Yeah, I think so. We have there's what am I going to do, and there's what is the company, how is it a process, not me individually. But
yeah, I feel like it's got to be process-wise.
It is, exactly.
It's too big to just be one person.
I agree. And so we engage a lot across the company with developers everywhere. I think the theme the last week has really shown is there's talking, and then there's listening, and then there's doing it iteratively, back and forth in a conversation. And I think the part that I'm very focused on is how do we make sure that we're in an ongoing conversation so that we're making things better over time.
Again, you're already having these conversations, just not actioning them appropriately.
Features and all that kind of stuff, how that sort of conversational part. We get a lot of information from a lot of people, but are there other ways that we can make that a deep part of the planning, that we do? I tell you, inside Unity, the Unity employees, individuals in Unity talk to their friends in game development all the time, and are constantly getting feedback from them. But I want to make sure that also represents, is represented in our plans.
Okay. Hopefully you guys got some set plans for how to kind of lay that out internally to make sure that all the things are getting to where they need to get to. There was a question over here I want to ask, not on here, about Unity being a mobile game first company. It seems like a lot of the focus on revenue here is from mobile games. Is that does Unity see itself as like a mobile first company, or is it just kind of? But how do you guys pick that? Because I know, for me, give a little background. I started with Unity because they were first to mobile, and it's like, oh, I need to make something for iPhone, and it was the only option. It's kind of what pushed me into it. And I know that's where a lot of this revenue and the new pricing model would be coming from. So is that how you guys picture the company, or can you talk a little bit about that?
I think we're a game developer first company, and I'm not trying to cop out that question because I'm going to come back to it. But like our job is to listen to our game developers where they're trying to go support those platforms as well as we can. And what I think is awesome about Unity is Unity works to make it easy for you to build a game and ship it across the platforms that matter to you. And so we're focused on, dozens of platforms that we actually focus on. And frankly, on those platforms, Unity tends to have the highest share of all. So I don't actually think we're mobile focused at all, but mobile is an incredibly important platform for many of our creators. Obviously, we're going to continue to invest into that, just like the PC, just like consoles, just like VR devices or new devices or whatever the next thing is that comes out. Like, because if developers are going there, then that's where we want to make sure that we support it well.
Okay. I mean, for me, like I said, the access to the devices was the kind of pushing point, and it's one of the things that also I think keeps a lot of people in Unity, because Unity's got this wide access to deploying out to.
That is true. Unity has a shitload of reach.
Just works and is pretty straightforward. Got 15 minutes left. I want to see if I can get through a bunch more of these questions. This one, we've kind of talked about it a little bit already, but how is Unity going to legally ensure that they can't retroactively change the TOS again? Is there any, I mean, you kind of answered this earlier, but I don't know if there's any more you want to say about it.
Yeah, we're going to, to me, there's two things we can do. I'll just call it trust and verify, I guess. Trust, do, and verify. So we're saying it very clearly. We're going to put it in our terms, and then we're going to make it clear and easy to track by making sure it's in our GitHub so that you can check to see whether there's something that's changed in any of those terms of service. That's the way we're addressing like how we do it. But yeah, I think that's the answer.
Okay. Let me get through it. I'm looking through all of my questions. There's a lot of good stuff here. Yeah, I want to take this one because it's one that's I think interesting and controversial. And you've talked a little bit about this before. They wanted to know if they can get a deep technical explanation of how the install-based tracking will work with the exceptions circling right now. When I was talking to Dave earlier on the stream, saying, hey, I would really love it if Unity had some magic piracy tracker thing that tells me all of my valid installs and tells me all of the pirated ones. You just briefly answer that one?
Well, our focus is on self-reported. Our focus is on, first off, I'm not the deep technical expert to give a deep technical answer on anything. Just, I wouldn't try to...
So basically, they don't know how many pirated games are out there.
But the answer is it's self-reporting, and our focus is on making sure that we're clear on data that works, that's easily accessible that you have, like store reports and things like that. And you don't want to do that, but you have a choice, and that you can just do the 2.5% revenue share. And then, by the way, we are going to enter into like, hey, yeah, let's have a conversation with our deep technical experts and your deep technical experts, and we'll continue to build, more ways to make sure that we're all clear there.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like the self-reporting is like the key thing here that people didn't know about, and I mean I didn't know about either. And
Yeah,
really,
honestly, when I read through it, I was quite confused.
That just popped up about wondering if you still believe the runtime fee policy works in all of this backlash. Do you think it's still a good idea? I get the sense that you do, but
I think I think this is a really important, critical program for Unity. I think what we announced last week, and we had some changes for today, it's critical foundation for the company. I think the choice is a good thing. I personally believe that when people do it, you should try the calculator, try it in with your numbers, see whether it works for you or not. They might find that they're going to just pay less if they do like based on initial engagements versus the revenue share, and that's awesome. That's actually why we wanted to build it that way. We think that it actually tracks well to a shared success model, and gives a way for people to not have to pay as much. So yeah, I really do believe it's going to be a strong program.
Yeah, I feel like for the majority of developers, it's probably going to be pretty good. Like it's a lot better than a big revenue cut, or than a lot of big revenue cuts. Especially if you're doing like a $20 or $50 or $60 game. And when you guys were thinking this through, like I guess, was that kind of the rationale? The rationale was just like, if you're building a $20 game, there's a nothing fee to do, and if you're building a massive game where you're not charging very much, but you're making millions and millions, you're still paying something. And I guess I'm also curious, why was the like rev cap not initially considered in there? Was it just thought that it wasn't even needed, that it was never going to go that high, or was it just planned like, hey, we wanted to? I mean, obviously, I know that the ideas that like, hey, we want to take 200% were not realistic, and I assumed that you always probably wanted to be under Unreal's percentage was my kind of guess. But why was that not kind of in there from the beginning? Is there a reason that it was kind of left out?
Well, listen, this is a transformative business model change, something that we're really, really focused on. And when we were working on our models, we expected that the vast majority of people would pay, 2 to 3% and often less. And so one of the things we heard when we put it out there is that, yes, even if that was the case, it was hard to plan for it because there were these outlier situations that maybe you couldn't control. And for some cases where we were like, well, if there's a case that doesn't work, and we should have just communicated this better, and we should have planned for this better. It's not our intent to charge someone, a crazy percentage or anything. We're not going to do that. But we needed to fix it so that people can plan and have this 2.5% revenue share, or do this particular so that they have choice. But the real fundamental idea, we always thought this was going to be somewhere around 2 to 3%. So like we're frankly just building on this transformative business model.
Yeah, it felt to me like one of those things that was probably thought internally and just never put down on paper. Everybody just kind of assumed that it would be that. Like I saw all the posts and the calculations and stuff, and saw the numbers, and my default reaction was like, I went to like watching Mythbusters and like, that just doesn't seem possible. Like if they did that, everybody would leave, and so it wouldn't make any sense at all. So yeah.
By the way, we didn't help either, right? Because
No, it was very unclear.
If we had the calculator, because as soon as we didn't have the calculator, everybody else had to implement it themselves. Maybe they didn't, and we didn't communicate the details well enough. So then the answers themselves, the way they calculate.
That's an interesting contradiction.
We didn't provide any other. That's on us. We didn't do a good enough job building out the information to make it clear. But even beyond that, the plan that I think we have now is a better plan because it gives people predictability and it gives them choice.
Yeah, I think that and it gives them a lower rate on, well, at least it gives the guys that I know a lower rate because they're working on these high-end PC games and stuff. It makes it much lower. There was another question about, which I think is pretty important one, about going forward, how you plan to kind of work with the community on big decisions, maybe not just on like big pricing ones, but other decisions in the future. Like, are you going to start reaching out for? Because honestly, I feel like from the beginning, it would have been great if there was some public polling, just reaching out to all Unity developers. Maybe even a little thing that pops up in the Unity hub that says, "Hey, go fill out this form. How do you feel about this thing? Give us your feedback." I thought something like that would be.
That's a fucking great idea.
Anything like going forward with the community to figure out these new decisions, especially when they're big ones that are going to piss off a lot of people.
Well, listen, I've been really focused over the last week on getting this particular plans updated and make sure we can get back out. I think, by the way, the idea that you just gave is a really great idea. I think polling, putting it in the editor, and sort of finding ways to connect is awesome. But yes, we will do it. I don't have any other kind of key things to talk about there, except for one, which I also am really excited about. Like this is our first real in-person Unite back. I think that Gamescom, and certainly at Unite, where we're together having time to talk specifically about where Unity is and where Unity is going. We'll be back at Unite in Amsterdam.
Very good.
First time since I think 2019 that we We did a kind of a hybrid one last year, but the first real one of being back in person. And I think we miss having that. Like, just as a, and, you know, beyond, you know, the like, hey, let me pitch the Unite is coming up. The actual thing itself of not having as much of that, where devs themselves are all together and all with Unity together, and we're talking about where we're going. I'm glad we're getting back to that. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I'm excited for Unite too, especially now that I think things are mostly better, and that most of the issues that at least the issues that I had and a lot of the people that I talked to personally had are pretty much addressed. I mean, there's still people talking about trust in the company and stuff, but we had a discussion about this earlier that like trusting companies is a strange thing. Like, hey, you want to trust that a company is not going to do bad stuff, but yeah, it's not what I don't base any of my personal feelings or emotions on trust on a company, because I feel like every company is a company. Like they change, they morph, they merge, and you know, they sell, and all kinds of random stuff happens, and it's a tough one. But hopefully you're able to kind of rebuild some of that. I think it will probably happen with a lot of these changes, especially the retroactive removal. I think that's gonna that kind of alleviates most people, at least like I said, most people I know is concerned. So obviously not everybody in chat, and obviously not all the Unity developers. By the way, yes, we are live for a couple people who seem to be confused about it. Well, I know we have a hard stop in like 4 minutes because you've got, I'm sure, a ton of other stuff to do today. But I wanted to just give you a chance to say any like last words and stuff for people. I think I've gone through all the questions that I had on. If you got any final words or parting things that you want to tell people before we go.
Yeah, I really appreciate the feedback. Listen, it's really tough feedback this week. Deserved feedback. I really appreciate it. It makes us better. And frankly, Unity is what it is because of this extraordinary community of game creators building extraordinary games. And if there's anything that the last week shows, if you pull Unity out of it, is that the extraordinary passion that everybody here has for what they do, their livelihood, their games, it is inspiring. It's inspiring. So I know we have work to do. I know that this announcement, while I feel very, very strong about the set of changes that we announced, I feel very passionate about this transformative business model. We have work to do to continue to earn your trust every day to make sure that we build the best version of Unity we can. So thank you for the feedback.
Cool. Yeah, and hopefully everybody keeps just sending their feedback, post on Twitter, let everybody know what.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. So that was a lot to take in over the past hour and a half. Big takeaways from that are it does appear to me, at least, that someone has dropped the ball big. Whether it was one person or a group of people in Unity, someone, fucking needed to have their hands on the wheel and really didn't. Whether it's worth dwelling on that now is hard to say, but Jesus, that's a lot to unpack. I think that there a couple of times when he didn't directly answer questions, whether that was because he was too nervous or was told not to, or he didn't have the figures, it's hard to say. I do feel as though I have questions about what this means for the future of Unity. I really do. Because business is a tricky thing. I think I said it last time. An example I used for why the initial model was so poor was Flappy Bird, which, if you don't remember what that is, it was a classic mobile game back in the day where you piloted a bird through a set of pylons and stuff like that. The game actually got really popular ridiculously quickly, and that's the thing about games. Games, it's not like there is a well-established rule where if you code this specific game in this specific way, you will get this specific amount of income. So it's kind of hard to know what will kick off or won't kick off. At the same time, it would be interesting to see how this changes the pricing of games, because I'm not sure if you've noticed this, but AAA games don't exactly do the best job. Like, I've had more fun, apart from, obviously with the exception of Baldur's Gate 3, I've had a lot more fun on indie games when compared to AAA titles. But for the longest time, there has been this discontent in the community about how much value you get when you buy a $60, $70, $100 game. And if Unity is going to start charging this, if they are going to implement this policy, it would be interesting to see how that conversation will change, because obviously companies aren't going to absorb this, they're going to pass it on to us. So will these AAA games that are currently asking for so much money end up having to charge a percentage above that to break even compared to the original profit margins? Will this cause indie games to be worth as much as AAA games? It is very hard to say, but what I think Unity needs to work on is coming up with a new way to make policy, because if they've messed up this badly, where they have this violent a response from every mother and their son, now would be the time to take pause and go, yeah, we fucked up, we need to do better, and try to figure out exactly where they fucked up. In many ways, though, it does appear like they are caught with their pants down, and it is difficult. Like, I do not know this person from Unity, so it's difficult to say whether he's been genuine or not, but it does appear like he's been really reactive to the situation in general. And I don't know, it just seems something about certain passages of his response didn't seem genuine. But if we are to take it at face value, at least, he is very much aware of the issues, and in his own way, he is trying to repair the trust that he lost from his user base. But one thing that irks me is the entire process feels incredibly rushed. He mentioned the GitHub repository called Reaper. That was gotten rid of. I'd like to know why that happened. He mentioned that, we had these conversations, but we really weren't listening. I'd like to know, well, who are those conversations with? What was said? What was taken away? Like I said before, it'd be very interesting to see how these policies were made, what considerations were taken, and just say like a time frame of what's going on. But time will tell how much damage is really done. I get the feeling that there is a lot more that could be done, but what more can they do beyond the pricing change that they have done with a 2.5% revenue split or other? Because, like I said last week, they are going to do this whether we like it or not, or a bastardized version of it. But I don't know. I would like it's kind of hard to write it off. Because like I said, they are a business, they need to make money, but it just doesn't sit well with me that they're charging like a runtime thing, like they said. Because it's sort of like that thing from Lord of the Rings where, like they said, well, yes, we had breakfast, but what about second breakfast? And then that evolved into the meme of, oh, yes, we had first $60, what about second $60? Sorry, my brain's gone to mush. I don't know. They definitely have a lot of work to do, and they, at least at face value, they are trying to repair it. So I'd very much like to revisit this when they introduce this live to the community, and to see what how that's received and how the program evolves as a response to that feedback. But regardless of their intent, regardless of what they were trying to do, the damage has been done. Because intent does not absolve you of your responsibilities, or it does not absolve you of your involvement in doing wrong. But for now, I think it would be best to, again, take pause and see if you vibe with what they're doing. Because if not, like they were saying throughout the entire interview, there were and are other options. So I would encourage you, if you are a developer who doesn't like this, shop elsewhere. There are other options out there that are developing into new and different areas all the time. I just hope, on a personal note, however, that they don't turn into the Activision of game development companies. Because I very much am a fan of Unity. While I may not program in it, I do appreciate everything that it's out there to do. I appreciate that they've done a lot for the community, and they are, in their own way, trying to repair bridges. But this is one of those things where they've lost too much good faith for it to just be fixed overnight. So I think in the next coming months, we are going to see we're going to see something interesting. It'll be interesting to see if their silence continues on the same way as Hello Games with their delayed response to fixing No Man's Sky. But in any case, that is it for me. Coffee Time with Poptart is now done and dusted, and I encourage you to take this information and do your own vibe check with Unity, and not just let me influence your decision so much. The information is out there both in this video and beyond, and no one's forcing you to do anything. You can do what you like. You can not use Unity, you can continue to use Unity, but it definitely does prompt a moral choice for a lot of people. As for this podcast, we're going to call it there. Thank you all for coming. As for tomorrow, I will probably get back into streaming. All throughout this week, I have been, and last week as well, I have been testing and probing where I can, chatting to streamers in the community about certain issues I'm having with OBS, and although the situation isn't 100% solved, it is solved enough to a point where I can get back into streaming some things. There are a couple of games which I'll probably have to avoid going forward, but I can say with a certain level of confidence that I am going to be back into a sort of regular schedule starting from tomorrow. So if you want to be here for that, more than welcome to join me. I don't know what I'm going to stream. I really would have liked to have brought back Mass Effect, but unfortunately I've gone way too far in the storyline to go back now. So I'll think of something. Thank you for joining in. You can probably see the links to my socials beneath me now on the desk, which is cool. I'm active on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube under the same username. But until we see each other again, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and I will see you when I see you.